All right, good morning. Welcome to Crossroads Consulting, Jeff Rhodes and Billy Rhodes. We have a special guest today, Jeff Carman with Carman Strategic Planning. A little background on Jeff. He provides tactical solutions to individuals and business owners who wish to transfer their businesses and estates on the most tax favored basis. Jeff has over 40 years experience doing this, and they tout that they do this more efficiently due to their street knowledge. Exactly what kind of street knowledge do you have, Jeff? Gang related? I know you lived out west. I shared some time with you out in Phoenix. I didn't know you at the time, but that's kind of our common ground and how we got brought together. But
Well,
welcome
thank
to
you.
this, and
Very nice to be here.
we appreciate you being here. But yeah, talk to us a little bit about what you do and how you help
Okay.
folks out.
Well, let me start with street knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, because no, I have not belonged to a gang, nor do I intend to. The reality is that a lot of what's learned in the industry as it pertains to estate planning and business succession planning is textbook.
Okay.
Okay. Lawyers come out of law school, accountants come out of business school, but the real knowledge in how you handle the affairs of families that are trying to transfer their businesses comes from actually talking to those business owners and getting the dynamics of their families. The biggest failure rate in the conveyance of businesses is personality, family fighting, that sort of thing. They make movies of it, they make TV shows regarding it. So having been at what it is I do for over 40 years has allowed me to get a lot of knowledge from actual clients and do my planning according to what I've actually seen on the streets.
Gotcha. Let's talk about some of the planning that you do. What are the different types, and how do you go about it? What's your process?
Okay. My primary client base are business owners, small business owners. I have worked with public companies. I work with the very affluent, but right now I'm very happy just working with local business owners because I can deal very much one-on-one and not get involved in all the boardroom and dynamics. So my goal in meeting with a client is to basically sit down with them, gather information as it pertains to their assets, liabilities, their family members, people they like, people they want to take care of, people they don't like, and they want to make sure they're not involved in the family situation or the business situation. And we will spend probably whatever number of hours it takes in order to gather that information. One thing I would point out is we do not charge fees for the time that we spend doing this. And I believe as a result of not charging fees, we have better answers from clients as a result of being able to talk about different scenarios, different planning tools, without them having a feeling that there's a meter running at $300, $400, $500 an hour.
Gotcha.
So the process is gathering information and objectives and finding out where the shortfalls are, where the obstacles are from getting from where they are today to where they want to be, and coming up with the solutions to do that.
Very good. We run across that quite a bit. What are some of the things that
Yeah,
you've seen out there?
yeah, no, exactly. So, some of our conversations prior to this, we talked about how you get involved in the transactions of businesses and the buy sell arrangements that come up. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on taking the buy sell relationship, expanding on that a little bit. Some of the pitfalls. It's not just an agreement between the seller and the buyer, because obviously the buyer typically wants the seller to remain for a certain period of time on an earn-out basis. But there's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of pitfalls that come in if the buy-sell agreement isn't structured properly. And I see that a lot in the private equity world. And I've even heard some of the horror stories that they've gotten themselves into because their buy-sell arrangements weren't weren't structured properly. And I'm sure you've had a lot of experience in that regard.
Well, let me talk a little bit about some basic facts. We know that every business owner is going to exit their business. Okay.
Right.
And it's either going to be as a result of retirement and sale, death, or disability. And planning for that, most times business owners will come up with a buyout, sellout arrangement, buy-sell agreement. And in the small business community, it's typically between two owners, or it may be an owner and a key employee. And they turn around and they write up all these documents and say, this is what's going to happen. Here's the buyout price it's going to be effectuated at, and here's the terms and conditions on which it's going to take place. Now, I'll give you a street scenario. For example, Jeff, you and I are sitting at a table, and unbeknownst to me, while we've been negotiating this buy-sell agreement, you've had a very large desire to get out of the business, go retire, and move on to fishing and whatever else you'd like to be doing. And we're sitting at the lawyer's table, and we're signing the documents that say that if someone wants to get out, the buyer will pay that person $5 million to leave.
Okay.
Okay. So now you and I have signed that. That basically obligates me to pay you $5 million if you want to leave. And you do this to me. I want out. And all of a sudden, we've just signed a legal document that says, I owe you $5 million. Now, of course, you're going to fight it. And the infighting ensues because maybe I don't have the $5 million that someone suggested that I pay you to get out.
Oh, so you're caught off guard at this point in time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe you don't have the $5 million in cash. You might have to borrow from a bank or use a line of credit or go to some alternative financing arrangement or worse.
Well, I certainly hadn't anticipated that at the moment we signed the document, I was going to be asked to pay you $5 million.
Yeah.
Okay. So in our planning, having seen stuff like this on the street, there are things that you can do within a buy-sell agreement to mitigate that situation. So it's not typical. It's not textbook in law school. It's stuff that you come up with as you go along as you see these situations arise. You may have a key person who wants to buy the business. Now, I'm going to tell you some stories. So we have key person over here who's interested in buying the business. The typical arrangement is there's an agreement in place between the owner, current owner, and the key man to buy the business. And the advisors, namely accountant, attorney, and their insurance agent say, here's what we do. We put everything in writing, and we'll have the key man own the $5 million policy on your life. And when you die, he'll take the $5 million, pay your estate, and your estate will transfer the stock. Okay?
Okay.
So you have a 40-year-old guy who just suddenly comes into $5 million. And he's sitting there, he's going, I got a $5 million check here, or I've got a lifelong business to run over here. Which would I prefer to have? And the reality is, he might prefer that $5 million in the bank. And now the fight begins. And the owner is no longer around to tell his side of the story. And you have a key man with $5 million in his hand who now goes to the family and says, yeah, I know I signed this, but you know what? I don't think it was done correctly, and I don't want to do it. Now, the family's in a position where they're going to be arguing with this gentleman. This gentleman's got $5 million of their money in the bank, and now they have to hire attorneys to enforce what's going on or find a third-party buyer. Mm-hmm. Once again, there are things that you can do in planning to avoid the situation. My belief is the current owner of a company that wants to sell should control as much of what takes place as possible until such time as that control is no longer necessary. That protects him, it protects his family, and allows a transaction to take place without the questioning of, will this guy actually turn over $5 million, in my example?
All right, so how would you resolve that? What vehicles would you use? What structure would you use to avoid such a conflict that they may not foresee happening. It comes up unexpectedly. How do you set the table then?
Okay. Well, you have to realize the reality of the situation, because typically what happens under the agreement we were talking about, where the key man owns insurance on the owner's life, it's either the company or uh, an increase in the compensation to that employee that funds the premium. Well, in essence, the owner is buying himself out. If I'm increasing compensation to that employee to pay premiums on insurance on my life, I've just paid the premium on the insurance, and I'm buying myself out. Make sense? Okay. If the company pays the premium, same thing. That's money the owner could have put in his own pocket and he set aside for the employee. What skin in the game has that employee put in order to acquire that business? In both those scenarios, he hasn't.
Right.
Okay? So let's just take a situation, and there's many ways of structuring this, but one very easy way of doing it is saying, look, rather than you putting your key employee in a position, I'll go back to my $5 million number, where he's going to own $5 million on you, paid for by you, to send to your wife, assuming that works out the way we wanted it to work out.
Right.
Why don't we just have the $5 million of insurance owned by you, payable to a trust or your wife, pay for it yourself, and let's structure an agreement that says this key employee is going to pay X amount of money over X number of years to you or your family, depending upon when that sale takes place. So let me give you an example. Key employee can probably not go to the bank and get $5 million.
Right.
Okay. If I can structure an arrangement where compensation is paid to my client or his family on a tax deductible basis, as opposed to an after-tax basis as you would in a sale, it is far more tax efficient to use money that's tax deductible than it is to use money that's after tax.
Yeah.
So we'll come up with arrangements that will allow the family to receive money from that key employee or the company on a tax deductible basis. And when the family receives it, the differentiation between the tax rate on capital gains and the tax rate on ordinary income is very little, and you certainly can offset that by raising the amount of money that's supposed to be paid. Now the family's sitting there with the $5 million in their bank account, holding collateral, the business as collateral, because we're not going to really transfer that business until a later point in time, but receiving compensation. So at the end of the day, we now have taken the risk of an employee not paying that $5 million to the family away from the equation, but he's still going to have skin in the game because he's still going to owe the family money over a period of time. So, but instead of an installment sale, it'll be compensation and deductible.
Very technical stuff.
Yes, it is.
You're not an attorney, right?
I am not an attorney.
But you get called in by attorneys and CPAs to help structure these deals.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, in a sale, I don't care whether it's a home sale or a business sale or selling a car, there's a lot of moving parts. And some of the greatest amount of moving parts is in the business, the sale of a business.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get called in by these experts, I mean, why would an attorney, an estate planning attorney, call somebody in like you?
Well, I have an advantage that the attorneys don't have. I speak their language. I know their craft, but I can make money out of thin air, and they can't do that. And you have to understand that most battles in family situations or in the conveyance of businesses, things of that nature, all come down to dollars and cents. Okay? I can create those dollars and cents through insurance, which accountants and attorneys cannot create. So the fact that I'm being brought in They understand the fact I speak their language. I know what they're talking about. I know what they're trying to accomplish. And there's a situation there which basically says we need money in order to make this work. Or maybe we need a different idea in order to make this work. My lifelong belief is there's no pride in authorship. I'll sit down with an attorney, I'll sit down with accountants. If they have a great idea, I'm not going to stamp on it because it didn't come from me. I'm hopeful that they don't stamp on mine because it didn't come from them. Mm-hmm. But it's a collaboration of advisors as opposed to one mind working on a situation.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we just touched on the surface of the buy-sell agreement, mm-hmm. Key man versus the owner. Obviously, a key man is a key man, and it's vital to the business. Mm-hmm. What happens in that relationship if it goes sour? How do you protect the business, even though they're not selling at this moment? They got a very important person, a VIP, somebody who's absolutely critical in the success of that business. How do you help that business owner who can't survive without this person, without this very important person on staff doing what they do? How do you protect that business if something happens to that very important person?
Well, there's different things that can happen to that very important person. They can be recruited away to a competitor, in which case they're alive but gone. Mm-hmm. And they can become disabled, in which case they're alive and gone. Or they can die. What my belief is, if you have someone that is that important to your business, then you better treat them as if they're that important to your business. And that means being able to provide benefits to them without having to provide it to everybody else under the sun. I would call those selective benefits. They're discriminatory. They can be from very simple to very elaborate. I prefer to keep things simple, and I'll give you a very simple idea. So let's take two scenarios. We want that key person to stay.
Right.
Let's say he's 45, he's the heir apparent, he's married, he's got young kids. Well, I can go to that employee and say, look, I've been talking to John Smith, the owner. He believes you to be very important here, and we'd like to provide some benefits to you beyond what we do for the other employees. So this conversation is going to be between you and me. What he would like to do is provide for you and your family your compensation, 5 years of your compensation, if you die while in his employ. And to that end, we would use insurance on you to the extent of 5 times your salary. And there would be an agreement between the company and you and your family that says if you die while still employed, they're going to write your family a check for 5 times your salary. We're not doing that for anyone else. How does that sound to you? Additionally, you're a key employee here, and the owner would feel really bad if you went out, got hit by a car, couldn't come back to work, and couldn't work anywhere. And he'd like to make sure that you're taken care of and your family's taken care of long term. Well, we can put in a salary continuation plan, which covers disability, which basically says if you become disabled, the company will support your compensation for a certain period of time, and then we're going to have a major insurance company provide you with compensation for the rest of your life, for example. That way, John Smith, the owner, feels like he's covering his obligation to you for what you've contributed to the business. Does that make sense to you? We also have the issue, what happens if the key man, who may or may not be the heir apparent to the business, predeceases the owner? If the owner's mind was that that employee was going to be his retirement program and his ability to walk away, and he dies, well, there's indemnification that should come to the company for his loss. There's indemnification that should come perhaps to the owner for his loss. as a result of the need for him to be available to take over and run the business upon death or retirement. So in the process of setting up benefits, we would talk to the key employee about having additional insurance payable to the company to indemnify for the loss. He may have certain talents that have to be replaced. He may have contacts that need to be nurtured along to reattach. There may be a financial impact on the business, so we indemnify the company for his loss. And we have the owner who's sitting there going, well, he was my exit strategy, and he's not there anymore. I may end up having to settle for less,
Right.
or find someone else. It may take time. And we have money that may come as a result of his death to the owner of the company so that he can decide what he would like to do, what options he has available going forward, whether he wants to look for a buyer today, try and find someone else to come in. And if he isn't that successful, he's already has money socked away for himself and his family.
This is interesting. A thought comes to mind. We're in a very tight labor market, and experience, credentials. When you're recruiting very skilled employees, most of the time you're looking to take them away from a larger organization,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or pull somebody out of retirement who's got years of experience running a business, doing some of the things that this particular business needs them to do. So on the recruiting side, oftentimes it comes down to wages, it comes down to benefits, it may even come down to an equity share. But a lot of times business owners don't want to give up any equity to bring on somebody. So some of the things that you're describing sounds to me like they would be recruiting tools. Is that something that you work with as well on attracting an employee? Maybe my business is a lot smaller than the company that we're trying to pull this individual from. Maybe it's a Fortune 5,000 company, but we're not even a Fortune anything company, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I pull somebody with that kind of credentials, that kind of experience away from a larger organization? And would it be using some of these tools that you're describing?
Well, the tools are certainly one avenue, but what I've learned over the years is that there are things that people value more than money. For example, I was working in one situation, father and son, and the son would keep complaining and dad would keep raising his compensation. And it finally got to the point where no matter how much money dad was paying him,
Exactly.
the son was not happy.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what the son wanted? He'd been in the business for 21 years. He wanted a piece of the company. He wanted pride of ownership. There's people that will take less compensation if at the annual meeting you present them with a plaque. So when you're recruiting away from other companies, key people, you got to find out what trips their trigger, what makes them motivated.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can go to a competitor and say, I'll pay you $10 more an hour. And the guy may say, I don't care.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Now, on the other hand, he may like to be recognized at the annual picnic, with a plaque. The money doesn't mean anything to him, but the plaque does. So in the recruiting process, you got to find out what makes that person tick and what would allow you to move him away from their current employment.
Yeah, that's a great point, because if you're trying to pull somebody away from a larger organization that has a lot better benefits package than what you have in your business, doing something different, maybe attaching a life insurance policy to this. Look, these are some of the things that we're willing to do for you that will protect you, protect your family. If something happens to you, your family's going to have more assurance that they're going to be cared for versus what you're doing now. Is that part of the strategy as well?
It could be.
Yeah.
And again, you try on different suits on that key employee that you're trying to recruit and see what makes him motivated to move.
Right, because what makes one motivated may not make the other one motivated.
Correct.
What comes in mind is we work with a lot of contractors, trades, where whether it be a roofing, a plumber, or electrician, they have to be licensed.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get a license, it takes financial stability, it takes knowledge, it takes time.
Correct.
A lot of people don't have those three in order to get the license and to get going. So they'll bring in a qualifier. And when I hear you talking about that, I've never heard anybody talk about that type of a product to offer to a qualifier. It's always been, well, we give them a percentage of the deal, or a percentage of the revenues to be a qualifier. But I'm sitting there thinking that might be a great product to be able to offer them, that's not so monetarily based on the front end, but protects them for offering years of their experience to be their qualifier.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. We had a company in Connecticut. We have a company in Connecticut, and we had a 70-year-old owner and his 35-year-old son who was coming in behind him to take over, who had absolutely zero experience in the business. However, we had a 62-year-old key man who'd been there since beginning of time, who had all the knowledge in the world, but was thinking of retiring. Our point to him was that you're very valuable to the company. We need to have you stay around for at least another 3 years while
Absolutely.
son gets acclimated to the business, and you can transfer knowledge that you have to him. Well, at 62 years old, 63 years old, he's married. And what we did is we went back and we said, we'll pay you 5 years worth of your compensation. He was making $100,000 a year. If you will stay with the company for 2 years, while son gets the knowledge to run the company. And after you leave at the end of 2 years, should you decide to do that, we will continue that benefit for a total of 15 years. So even beyond your employment, if you die within that 15-year time frame, we will pay you that 5 times your compensation to your family.
That's a perk that could be the difference in getting a key person away from another organization. But it also sounds like potentially discrimination. If I bring Billy on away from another company and I'm giving him a benefits package that nobody else in the company has, how do I avoid a discrimination situation? Would it simply be because it's a contract between me and him? He's a key person. Discrimination doesn't really apply if it's a contract arrangement with a highly experienced. Am I on the right path, or?
Well, think of it this way: if it's not something that's subject to ERISA and requirements of non-discrimination, I can make any arrangement compensation-wise with a employee in my company, whether it be higher pay, shorter hours, a car, mileage, cell phone usage, vacation time. I can do anything I want as long as it's not ERISA-based and considered discriminatory by Department of Labor, government, or any of those other organizations.
Yeah, so we're talking about individuals who don't fit the typical employee profile. They might have a title that's different than anybody else. They may be in a category that's not currently in place now.
Okay.
So you can set up different benefits based on the experience of the employee, the new employee, or even an existing employee that all of a sudden you realize has skills that nobody else has. You can set up a different title. You can set up a different classification.
Yep.
Therefore, allowing you to set up a benefits package that could be very, very appealing to a prospective new employee or that existing employee that you want to retain.
That's correct. And you just mentioned title. Perhaps someone leaving an existing employer might like to have executive vice president of as a title,
Yep.
And that might be more important than a compensation package or an increase in pay. Again, as long as we're not doing anything that's unlawful in providing benefits to an employee, doesn't violate any of the codes as it applies to labor, we can provide whatever benefits we want to an individual employee.
Yeah, very interesting. So, um, how many people do what you do? Would you say? Do you have a lot of competition, or is it just something that over the years, the 40, 50 years that you've been doing this, just seeing all the things that you've seen, the good, the bad, you've seen the horror stories, you've seen the really success stories that, man, thank you for following my direction because you guys really hit it big. You really lined everything up and it just worked out perfect.
Wow. If you look at the life insurance industry as a title, there's thousands and thousands of people in the life insurance industry.
Exactly.
When you look at people that can actually do comprehensive planning, that gets very much narrower. I used to represent security sales. I eliminated that from my practice. Okay. I focused primarily on this type of planning, whether it's estate planning, succession planning, charitable planning, things of that nature. So there's fewer of us that are doing it. I do it without fees, so it's narrower than that. I have 50 years of street knowledge, so it's narrower than that. Now, am I the end all to end all in the industry?
Right.
I'm going to say probably not. Okay, because I don't know who else is out there. But I do know when I'm working with my clients, they get my attention, they get my time, they get my talent, and they get a superior job from me than they're going to get going to a life insurance agent who, by the way, are being trained very differently these days than my upbringing in the business.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say that I've known you for a few years. I haven't had the opportunity to work with you very closely until just recently. Um, we work with somebody that brought us an insurance policy that was talking about how good it was, especially for the private equity type client. And we presented that policy to you, and you're like, yeah, give me the night. So the next morning we have a phone call with you, and quite honestly, I just thought it would be a 5 to 10 minute conversation. And you went through that very detailed, page by page. And after an hour, we looked at each other and said, this is the biggest piece of garbage policy that can be offered because there's a lot of underlying
Projections that weren't possible.
weren't possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when all of a sudden the light went off in my head. And now when I talk about you, those are the types of things I'm looking at. You're not looking to sell somebody, Paul. You're looking to put them in a product that's going to fit them for the time that they need it and ongoing. So that's what we really appreciate.
Just to add a thought to that policy had 55 pages to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded great on the surface. But after you looked at it, you said, well, here's why this has a high probability it's not going to work the way it's designed to work.
Well, let me kind of give you a little history because I've seen it all in the time I've been in the business. And life insurance, for what it is, death benefit, it is an incredible tool. Unfortunately, there's insurance companies out there that tout it for being other things than what it really is. And they make projections that are not substantiated in the real world when you start to examine what it is they're telling you. And from my mind, when I'm dealing with clients and their insurances or their wills and their trusts or their planning, I am trying to get as close to perfection and guarantees as I can, as allowed by legal documents and product. And so I'm very skeptical of some of the things that insurance companies are putting out in the way of illustrations. I'm very skeptical of the way they're training their agents to sell life insurance to, gee, it's going to put your kids through college, it's going to retire you, it's going to pay for your house, it's going to on and on and on. And again, my favorite expression is that an illustration of for life insurance only guarantees that ink sticks to paper. Okay.
Yeah.
So I examine the tools that I'm using with my clients, and I know the pitfalls, and I will tell them what the pitfalls are. And if they want to go ahead with those pitfalls, I'm more or less going to let them go with someone else, because I'm, not interested in the selective memory that, gee, you never told me that.
Yeah.
It's going to take place, a few years down the road.
Yeah, this one particular case that we're talking about involved a premium finance arrangement. It involved a variable investment arrangement. Variable being that we really don't know what your investment return is going to be, because you don't know what the stock market's going to do.
Correct.
You don't know what interest rates are going to do. So when they start projecting based on variables, the projections look too good. And I think in this case here, along with the premium finance arrangement, which happens a lot, right?
Yep.
The variable aspects of it, and the fact that it was 55 pages just threw up some red flags. And so your expertise allowed me to make a decision: is this really something that I want to represent? And to be honest with you, I don't feel comfortable with representing that particular product. I know it's offered by a large insurance company, and there's many others like it, but it really comes down to the end result. I mean, after I go through a period of 5 or 10 years, is it really going to perform? And there's too many ifs, too many reasons that it won't perform.
Here's the interesting thing. The reason that illustration is 55 pages long, it's because the insurance company has you sign it. And what they're basically saying is, we disclosed everything to you, and you signed on the dotted line that you understood everything that's on these 55 pages.
Yeah, who's going to read 55 pages?
Don't come back to us and say you didn't know.
Yeah, and it's written by lawyers, so you're not gonna understand it. But to your point, 55 pages. It's how can I possibly understand that?
Well, Jeff, we could probably go on for days talking about different products. I don't think you all want to sit here for days, but we certainly appreciate you coming by this morning and sharing some insight with you and what you do. And we look forward to working with you, and I
appreciate the opportunity.
Making you part of the Crossroads Consulting ecosystem, because really that's what we are. We meet with our clients, and we can't do everything, but we have partners like you that we can put in front of them and see if you can offer some value. So thank you for coming by.
Well, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
How does one person, or how do people get in touch with you?
Well, I don't have a website because I've never marketed through the website, but I'm always available on my cell phone, which is 602-690-8134. My email is jeff@Carman, CARMAN, plan.com, or reach out to Crossroads, and
I was just going to suggest that.
So we'll probably be sitting across from each other at lunch or something.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. Man, this has been fascinating.
Yeah,
really.
very good.
Very technical. I love talking to people like yourself that have that extensive knowledge, the extensive experience, and you specialize in things that are so important to so many people.
No.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Pleasure being here.